Everyone, and thank you for the invitation to deliver a keynote speech at this conference. My name is Susanna Laurin, and I've been active in the accessibility field for as long as I can remember. As Managing Director and Chair of the Funka Foundation, I lead research projects focusing on user needs and empowerment of users with disabilities. I carry out strategic assignments for the European Commission and national governments when it comes to disability policy and legislation. As representative to the EU for the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, IAAP, and the UN initiative G3ICT, I make sure that the accessibility profession can pride itself of high quality and guaranteed competence through education and professional certification. I'm also actively contributing to European standards to support EU legislation in my role as chair of the ETSI-CEN-CENELEC Joint Technical Body on e-accessibility. I would like to talk about how I see the past, current, and future situation of digital accessibility in Europe and beyond. First of all, I must say that we have come a long way. When I grew up, children with disabilities were mostly in institutions. In Sweden, a country many people think about as modern. My visually impaired friends needed help from another person to read everything that came into the physical mailbox. It could be an invoice, a love letter, or the results of a medical test. That's far from independence. With the PC and assistive technology, this changed a lot, and people with disabilities got better opportunities to study and work. With a smartphone, there was nothing less than a digital revolution. Technology also supported the mainstreaming of the educational system, which means that most children with disabilities today are better integrated in society from an early age. I do not claim that everything is fine, far from. But progress is sometimes hard to see when you are in the midst of a struggle. After many years in the community, it's easier to recognize that we have indeed taken some important steps in the right direction. At policy level, the EU took its time to wake up. But just before 2020, things started to happen. All member states, as well as the European Commission itself, have ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Based on this, disability strategies are developed at EU level, usually for 5 years at a time. The strategies contain focus areas for research, flagship initiatives like the Disability Card, policy programs, and legislation. In 2017, the Procurement Directive got increased requirements on accessibility, which made it easier to buy accessible. In 2018, the Web Accessibility Directive entered into force, meaning that public sector bodies need to make their websites, apps, and documents accessible. And next year, the European Accessibility Act will force economic operators who want to sell certain products and services on the inner market to comply with accessibility requirements, no matter where they are headquartered. EU accessibility legislation is unique in the way enforcement is set up. The monitoring of accessibility that member states carry out doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. The methodology encouraging end-user feedback rather than complaints is also specific to Europe. The European standard that supports the current legislation, the EN 301549, includes a lot more requirements than the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, which is the usual benchmark at global level. All in all, the EU used to be following what happened in the US closely, but now we are actually leading the way. Australia, Canada, as well as countries in South America, Africa, and Asia are implementing the European standards and looking at our legislation for inspiration. That's something to be proud of. I personally do not think that legislation is always the best driver for change. I tend to think that we need to change people's hearts and minds to succeed. But for countries who had less focus on accessibility before the Web Accessibility Directive entered into force, we do see an increase in awareness leading to improved accessibility. We also see more and more accessibility expert companies on the market, and thousands of professionals who get certified. At the same time, there are also problematic examples, like member states who struggle to find expertise, agencies who do not have funding to create better interfaces despite wanting to, and organizations who rather hide their inaccessible content when being monitored than fixing them. But if we look at it in a longer perspective, the directives are important because legislation shows what kind of society we want to have. I don't know how long it will take, but I firmly believe that accessibility will be the natural and standardized way digital interfaces are created in the future. Not long ago, only few people used the seatbelt, and I remember both friends and taxi drivers pretending to have the belt on when the police drove by. Nowadays, I think everyone uses the seatbelt. It's no longer seen as a nuisance, but something you just do when driving. Accessibility needs to be perceived in the same way, something we just do without thinking about it. The biggest challenge I see is the lack of training. Across the EU, still only a small minority of universities train graphical designers, content creators, developers, and UX designers in accessibility. This means that we will have generations of web professionals who will need to relearn on the job. That's extremely inefficient and has to change. There is already a shortage of accessibility competence, and with the European Accessibility Act, demand will explode. We do need experts, but even more important is that the general ICT providers who design and develop systems, websites, products, and services all have basic accessibility knowledge. This way, digital interfaces will be accessible by default, instead of first created inaccessible and remediated afterwards. Far too many resources are wasted on this reverse engineering these days. Building knowledge is also what IAAP is focusing on. If you want to support us in these efforts, do reach out. A couple of words on technology, even if I'm sure most of you are sick and tired of the hype around artificial intelligence. New technology, AI or not, offers opportunities for people with disabilities, but also risks. The stakes may be higher with AI, but in principle, this has always been the case. Any innovation can support accessibility or destroy it. We just need to make sure that development takes persons with disabilities into account. Nothing about us without us, as always. I believe we can look forward to many smart solutions in the near future. Some of them may even be presented at this event. I hope you will enjoy the conference and learn from each other. But I have one pledge. If you have knowledge or experience in accessibility, do share that with people outside of our little bubble. Propose a presentation about accessibility to the program committee for a cybersecurity event. Take the time to show an accessibility feature on the phone to your neighbor, or ask the owner of your local grocery shop if they realize how difficult it is to reach the payment terminal if you have a motoring permit. Be nice, explain, share. That way we can slowly increase knowledge in society at large. Together, we can make a change for a better world for everyone. Thank you for your attention.